Welcome to this week's episode of The Formula, where we break down and explore the elements of achievement in world-class performers. I'm your host, Trevor Carlson. This week I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Aaron Serrano. Aaron is an All-American wrestler, a military veteran. He was an officer in the Marines, and a business owner. He owns a company called Military Cost Cutters. And Military Cost Cutters is doing some awesome stuff, really partnering with local businesses to help make sure that veterans get their military discount. I met Aaron a few years ago at a pitch competition where he was pitching his business, and he won. I didn't even make it past the first round, but Aaron did an awesome job. I reconnected with him recently at a conference. We had a great talk, so I invited him to be a guest on the show. I really hope that you can learn a few things from Aaron's experience as a wrestler and in the military. I mean, he shares a lot from what it's been like to get started on his first business as well. Aaron, would you like to share the best lesson or top lesson or whatever lesson that stands out in mind to you that you learned with your time in the military that you've been able to apply to your experience as a business owner?
Yeah, for sure. So first and foremost, thanks, Trevor, for having me on this. I'm excited to see how this plays out today. But, there's so many lessons we have learned, or I learned and could take away. But, I mean, one of the biggest things is, you've got to work off the 80% solution. They taught us that in the Marine Corps where, if you wait for the 100% solution, things aren't going to be great for you. So you go with the 80% and you just kind of adjust fire from there. And I think that really transitions to the business world, when they talk about MVPs and stuff like that. You got to work with what you got and you got to make the best of it.
Do you have any examples of how you've used the 80% rule in your current business?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So when we were going, and this is, when we were first launching, when I was, boots on the deck and talking to everybody was, we came up on one where somebody wanted to advertise like banner ads on our site, and we didn't have that set up. And rather than halting the launch of our program to add those features into it, I just simply, I said, yep, we will make that happen, and we figured out a way to develop that and code it into the program. But that's a classic example where some people might hold off the launch or hold off until they have that perfect 100%. You can what if all day long. What if a grasshopper had nine? Birds wouldn't mess with them. So I mean, you can what if all day, but we took that solution, we just ran with it.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like that a customer approached you about adding something to your specific solution, and then you almost pre-sold it to them.
Yeah, so we were getting ready to launch it, and I wanted to get a few businesses on board before we did, so you could show them, hey, here's what we got, and one of them actually mentioned that, and I wasn't about to delay a launch just so they could have their advertising on the side. So we just we launched it and we added in about a week later. But it's just another small point, but you just got to remember your mission or why you're doing what you're doing and just go off that.
Do you find that that's something that typically stands out with most of the stuff that you're doing, is basing everything off of your reason why you're doing it?
Yeah, I mean, you can always get sidetracked, right? You can talk to 1,000 different people, and all of them have great input, right? And if you took everybody's input, you'd be following yourself in a circle trying to figure out which one you want to go with. So there's a core reason why you start everything. That's why I believe it. Like, I started this business to support veterans and connect them with military-friendly businesses, and that is the core mission of our company and our program, and that's what we roll off of. So every decision is based, off of, is this going to support the veteran and the military-friendly business or not?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I feel like there's a lot of people out there that, they have a good idea or something that they're working on, but they struggle with articulating what their why is. What advice would you give to someone who's working on a project and really thinking about, they're trying to figure out, like, they know it's important to them and they know they want to do it, but they have a hard time articulating it. What advice would you give to them?
I mean, articulating it, I don't know, that's kind of tricky, because if you can't articulate it, then how are you building it, or how are you developing it or launching it? I mean, this just goes back to, I have friends I know that, are about to launch something. And of course, somebody comes up with a good idea to, to add to it or to do something, they delay it, and they delay it 4 months, and then somebody else has another great idea, and they delayed it another 4 months. It's like, your whole mission was to support, X, Y, and Z, and now you're 9 months, 12 months, delayed. Like you still aren't supporting them or building this product to support, this group or person or whatever. So, to articulate it, I don't know, just keep going over in your head like what you're doing and figure out how, what best approach or how to best articulate it. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean by that. It's something where it's like, if you can't articulate it, is it important enough to do? That's kind of the question I ask myself. If someone's like, "Why are you doing it?" I'm like, "Well, that's a good question. Maybe I need to think about that." Let's take a step back a little bit and kind of talk about, because you sent over your list of things that accomplishments, kind of your story, whatever you want to call it, and it was really impressive. So maybe if we can take a couple steps back, and because you were a collegiate wrestler, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Yeah. So let's go back to how like your experiences in wrestling and kind of how you went from this all-American collegiate badass wrestler to where you are today.
Okay, for sure. Well, I'm still a badass, so at least I think I am. I don't know if my kids and everybody would agree, but yeah, it started early. The reality of the situation was I knew I wasn't going to be a big football player, even though I love playing the sport, and I'm not tall, so it just stuck with me. Like I'm just an aggressive. I loved it, playing physical sports, and my buddy at the time was like, "Hey, dude, come check out wrestling." I'm like, "All right, yeah, let's give it a shot." And I was like, "Whoa, this is legalized pain. Like I can make people hurt and actually, have some finesse and technique with it." And it fit me, because it's just I love team sports, and it's just wrestling is, it's kind of an individual sport where at the end of the day, when you look at yourself in the mirror, it was on you. Like there's nobody else. You can't blame somebody for dropping a ball or striking out or anything. It's on you to do what you got to do. So you figure it out, right? You go out and you earn it. You get what you earn. So that's it. Kind of just stuck with me, and I guess I was pretty decent at it, and it helped open a lot of doors for me.
Do you think that I'm trying to think of how you worded that, where it's really like on you? Do you think that type of approach really affected you becoming an entrepreneur and a business owner?
Yeah, maybe. Everything's put out there for a reason. And I believe just I'm not going to obviously get biblical and everything, but everything leads to where you are, right? You've got to draw from your past. And I just believe that wrestling and my teachers in school and my family and my upbringing and the Marine Corps, like everything plays a part, and I think it just helped impact the way I am today, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. With wrestling, I wrestled. I'm definitely wasn't. I wouldn't call myself a good wrestler. I did it, but so you're wrestling in high school. What was the process like of I guess how did that work? Where you went from a high school wrestler to a collegiate? Uh, what was that step up in competition like? What changed?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting, and I coach youth now, and I try to explain this methodology to parents and stuff, because you don't want a parent living vicariously through their kids. Unfortunately, it's out there today, but I still remember it, like it was yesterday. My high school coach told me, "Hey, if you wrestle summer wrestling and go to Fargo, which is this big national tournament, you're going to open some doors and some eyeballs are going to see you." And I went up there and I did decent. I didn't even place. It's so tough. I had like 120 some dudes in my bracket, but it opened up the doors and actually got me a college scholarship. And I just, I told myself I'm not the best in the room, but I'm going to go 100% and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to grind it out. And it just, you see 4-time state champions not even cracking a starting lineup, and you'll see a kid who placed once in state being the starter. It's just, it's how you adapt and how you just go off of that, and you take what you learn. It was interesting. I had a guy from Romania as my practice partner, which he just beat the living crap out of me for a whole year, but that was the best year I could have had because it just made me so much better.
Yeah, I definitely got the definitely got the crap kicked out of me quite a few times in wrestling. I understand what that feels like. I was the little guy on the team. I think I wrestled like 103 most of my high school career. So, uh,
But you and I throwing some elbows together, I bet.
oh yeah, for sure. um, so as you transitioned into college wrestling,
Yep.
uh, I guess I'm wondering what you kind of said that everything works together. All your experiences kind of created who you are and what you're doing today. I'm wondering what types of things from your collegiate wrestling career really played a factor. Like what things really stand out to you that played a factor into your current success with your current company.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's on you. You got to make weight, right? I think you're familiar with that, and you don't go in there and be a tenth of a pound over. It's you make weight. Like at the end of the day, it don't matter what happened or what happens. Like you're going to make weight, and it doesn't matter. You can make every excuse in the book, but there's 24 hours in a day, and maybe that's what the company. I'm just it's one speed. You go forward as fast as you can, and you just adapt. And maybe that's what helped out with this business. It's just I hate to fail. Like that's the biggest thing too. I cannot stand failure. And when I would lose a match or lose a tournament, I can't stand it. I can't look myself in the mirror and be like, what happened. Um, you get what you earn. I think Tom Brands with the University of Iowa was huge on that, and I'm a firm believer on that. Like go get it, right? Like figure it out. And with business, I do not want to fail, and I don't even, mentally, I don't even put that in my head. Like that doesn't pop up. So, you do what you got to do to make this successful.
Yeah, absolutely. It almost sounds like some concepts from I think I'll call it like a thought camp, like the extreme ownership, where it's like it doesn't matter how hard, like it doesn't matter how hard you tried or how hard you tried to be a good leader. All that matters really is the results. That like how do they put it? There's no such thing as bad leader or bad teams, just bad leaders, and all that really matters is the results that you got.
Yeah. I mean, you have to empower, like when I was in the Marine Corps, like you have to empower your younger Marines. I mean, it only teaches them responsibility and leadership, but then those small goals, you're empowering them through small goals, and those small goals end up being this large goal that they accomplish, and they feel so good about it, and you're teaching them leadership, and you're empowering them, and you're letting them make their own decisions, you're letting them fail and learn from failure, and at the end of the day, that's a cycle that happens, right? Because when I'm gone and they're in my position or whatever, then they're going to do the same thing, and that's just that cycle that continues to grow, and you've got to empower them to know that failure, you're going to make, you're going to fail at some time or another. You're going to do something wrong, but you've got to learn from it, and then teach off that.
Yeah. Did you have a specific process that you would walk those young Marines through if they did experience some type of failure?
Yeah, I mean, so I was kind of unique. I was enlisted. So I went, after I got my college degree, I did enlist into the infantry in the Marine Corps, and then I became an officer. So I kind of got to see, or go through both sides. And I firmly believe that, like my staff non-commissioned officer, which was like my right-hand man or woman, you know, there's certain paths, and we won't get into it here. This could be hours, but it's really, you don't want to micromanage, but you're there, to kind of help build them, because that's what I needed to do. I needed to build them and make sure they're the best, they can be. So when they failed, I always had that conversation with my right hand, person, like, did I fail somewhere, or where did the ball get dropped? And a lot of times, it's just you have to go through them. You can't guide them on every you know situation. Like they'll go through it, and sometimes like, oh wow, I've never even experienced that before. Like I'm glad we did, and let's get everybody together and let's learn from this, so nobody makes this, bad decision or something again. But I usually let my it's called staff non-commissioned officers, and my NCOs, my non-commissioned officers, like they did it, they understood it, and they ran it. So
Yeah. So what was the process? How did you get from going to college, graduating college, to becoming enlisted in the Marine Corps?
yeah, well, so I was originally going to join the army because that's my family's all we're all soldiers, and I don't know what happened, but eventually I think my buddy who told me like, hey, you should join the Marine Corps, and I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. I saw the moto video, like I'll do it. So I enlisted and just at you know hey, let's go do it, and went through boot camp and learned everything, and then just I had a really bad experience. Matter of fact, I don't even know if a lot of people know this, but I had a bad experience with this officer, and I was just like, at that time, I was a little bit older because I went through college. I was like, man, like this is not good. So me thinking, I can change the world. I was like, I'm going to become an officer, and I'm going to hopefully, make sure no young Marine goes through the same thing I did, and that's how I ended up where I was at.
Yeah, it's I can't even imagine what boot camp or any of that stuff is like. But I imagine that, if it was something that stood out to you like that, it probably had a pretty big impact on the direction of your career.
Yeah, controlled chaos.
That's that sounds like you hear a lot about in business, but I think that it's even probably to an even more extreme in the military. Okay, so you were an officer. If I remember correctly, and I might be misremembering this, but when we were talking at the summit where we met, were you doing a lot with convoys when you were deployed over in Iraq?
Yep. That's what I did. I did the large convoys. So basically, we'd have like 75 vehicles, and we had some of those civilian contractors embedded with us. So I mean, if I remember correct, I think sometimes they would stretch out like 4 or 5 miles, but that's what we did. And then I also got the fortunate, or unfortunate, however you want to call it, opportunity to do also the smaller ones. So 15 vehicle, all military gear, just going from small battle positions to battle positions.
Yeah, that sounds so. Part of me is like that sounds really awesome, and another part of me is like, man, that was probably fairly intense at certain points in time.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it. Sometimes I have to reflect and laugh on this because when you're on the roads in Iraq, it's really kind of you know if I make there's an obstacle here, and if I go, one of my decisions is, do we go left or right, and that can sometimes mean somebody's getting blown up, and now I think like, do I do I call this guy now or do I call him later? It's like some of the decision making, it doesn't even compare, but like that's what leads you to now. I mean, I guess I have a different mindset on stress levels.
Right. Yeah, those sound like when you put it like that, it makes some of the regular day-to-day decisions seem pretty, or like things that might be stressful. You're like, well,
Right.
in the scheme of things, this is a pretty mild mild decision or situation.
But I mean, they're both equally like, everything's, I don't want to say equally the same, but I mean, the joy of like seeing my sales, guys and sales gals like meeting their goals is just as comforting as, when I get to see those 18 and 19-year olds, doing great stuff. I mean, I stood back in awe sometimes, like seeing what they could do. And it's like, you know what, we got a bright future ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't necessarily want to dive into specific stories or anything like that from your time overseas, but I am kind of wondering what were the biggest differences you saw between, because I have a few questions because I think a lot of this stuff is really interesting, and the military does stuff for the most part, it seems like really effectively or with some order to it. And what I'm wondering is when you look at like a leader or an officer, what were the traits that stood out in like a good functioning team, good leader, good officer in those types of situations?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things, and I tried to do it, and maybe I didn't do it all the time. I don't know. I'd like to think I did, but it's just lead them by example, right? Like, number one, I'll never tell you to do anything I wouldn't do. But number two, I'm going to show you that I'm going to do it. So I loved leading by example, and sometimes, they'd have to put me in check and, tell me, hey, stay back a little bit or whatnot. But leading by example, that's the biggest one I guess I can come with off the top of my head.
Right. Yeah, so it sounds like that it's just more or less like, don't instruct anybody to do anything that you're not willing to do. Or there was a, yeah, I mean, there's like 100 different sayings about something like that, but it's funny that those cliches end up being the ones that turn out to be true most of the time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even when we do our sales training now and everything, I tell them like, I will do it. Like you watch me do it, and we'll learn together, and we'll mold this great, this great piece of, whatever we're molding together. Like, take a little bit of me, a little bit from what you're doing, but I don't tell them like you do it and then hey, good job. It's like, no, I will show you. Like, let's do it together. Like, I will be up there with you. So.
Yeah, Aaron, you seem to have this. I'm gonna see if I can put put some words to it, but it's almost like a very determined, like you're. It doesn't sound like you get very frustrated very easily. You just kind of like figure out a way to keep moving forward. Where does that attitude or demeanor come from?
That's a good question. I trust me, I do get frustrated, and that's a whole separate. You and I can drink some beers over that. But I don't know. I mean, stuff's going to happen, right? It's in Murphy's Law out there. Like something's always going to happen. It's not going to be perfect. So rather than dwelling on it, just go with it, learn from it, and just change course. And I think you can relate to this just as well as any other young entrepreneur or business owner or person in life. Like just adjust, right? It takes so much negative energy to dwell on something so bad. It's like, you know what, it happened, get over it. Now let's adjust and make sure we move on course what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you have to someone who, maybe they're struggling within a leadership role or within their position at an organization, or could even be somebody that's at an earlier stage startup or company, and they're kind of struggling a little bit. What advice would you have to them to maybe encourage them or help them turn their attitude around a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I was at John Deere, so I kind of get the big company picture, and then obviously now as a small business. But I mean, just talk, right? I mean, you have mentors if you're a young business owner, entrepreneur. Like, try to find a mentor. Like, that doesn't need to be your sole guidance, but it's really good to like bounce, because I guarantee you, he or she has probably been through something that you've been before. But pick up the phone, give them a call, shoot them an email. And if you're at a big company and you're frustrated, like somebody, I would assume somebody's writing a report on you or something, just, professionally just kind of, pull them to the side and say, hey, like, this is where I'm kind of coming from. And you'd be amazed, like a good leader will listen to you and he or she will help guide you or, find a solution to the problem.
Yeah. What do you do if you're working for somebody that you would perceive to be a bad leader or have bad leadership habits?
Right. Well, so for me, I would take it as a blessing in disguise, because then I know what not to do, and how I would not act or operate if I were ever in their position. So that's what I would do. But if you have a heartfelt conversation, like this is what I see, and kind of maybe see where they're coming from with their position. Because I mean, let's face it, everybody's going to have 10%. That's what I call it. There's always there's 10% of everything in every workforce or every organization that you're in, and just make the best of it. So I guess that goes back to, it's a blessing in disguise for me.
Yeah, man, I love your attitude. It's awesome. it's like you kind of find the how do I put it, like glass is half full, the every challenge is an opportunity type of thing, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. It's definitely refreshing. Going back to some of the military and leadership stuff. So let's talk a little bit about teams. If you could name off three things that make a highly functioning team successful, what would those three things be?
Oh man. I mean, direction, right? They have to know what direction they're going, and direction should drive off of the goal or the mission. Communication is obviously key. The direction key. And I got to name one more for you. Maybe knowing your role. I've always said that too. You got to know your role. Like, you got it's kind of counterintuitive, but you got to know when to lead and you got to know when to follow, especially if you're in a team environment. And when everybody works together towards that goal and they know their direction or their role and they communicate well, then obviously they should achieve great results.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's and knowing your role is really important, because it's like, if you have somebody that their job is to be doing sales and they're handling, like in a business environment, if their job is to do sales and they're doing customer support or something else, it's like you need your team to understand what their role is and why, if I'm understanding it correctly. And I'm kind of relating it back to my experience as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure you went through the same thing too, and I think it's unilateral, or it's collective across the entire spectrum. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you were transitioning out of the military, you walk me through that process of, so you left the military and you went into military cost cutters, right? Or was there some other stuff that happened in between
I
there?
had a small little pit stop at John Deere for about a year and a half or 2 years. I can't remember off the top of my head, but my wife and our family were moving from California back here to Iowa, so um, yeah, we were moving back here. So I got a great job opportunity with John Deere, and I'm thankful for that. And it was at that point, and I don't want to jump in our itinerary here or whatever, but where my identity was stolen, and it just catapulted military cost cutters and the launch of it. So, and then I went to military cost cutters.
Yeah, so your identity got stolen?
Yeah, yeah, like
Oh shit.
after I left, I was like, and there's studies, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but veterans are twice as likely for identity theft. And no shit, like a week later, I think it was like my credit cards and everything are declined. I'm like, what is going on? And they're like, oh yeah, you just spent like $5,000 at Home Depot. I'm like, what the, I'll keep it PG on here. And they're like, yeah, Northern California. I was like, bullshit. Like, no, I'm here in Iowa. And I was like, oh my gosh. And they're like, yeah, we'll cancel everything, and then it just costs money and everything to, check, your wife and your kids now. And it's just very frustrating. So yeah, it just catapulted military cost cutters.
Yeah, so tell me what military cost cutters is.
Yep. So the elevator pitch, no. Uh, as we connect military-friendly businesses with the military community via our web and mobile platform. So basically, what that means is we're a centralized database. So anybody from coast to coast can go to our website and they can search for a military-friendly business. So now, when you think about a business like their customer acquisition, like typically it was if you were a customer before, you kind of knew that maybe they had mentioned it or something, or maybe they had advertised it or something. But now full fledged. Anybody on our website is military friendly, and I mean we're not nationwide, right? So somebody in New York might search it, and there might not be anybody, but usually we get good input, and we know where they're at, and we can kind of focus our operations that way too. I mean, the way I look at it is like we're a drop in a bucket, and pretty sure that enough buckets will fill a pond, and pretty soon a pond becomes an ocean, and you got something great. So that's what MCC is, or military cost cutters. Then the other aspect is veterans like myself. When you leave active duty, you get your discharge paper, and unbeknownst to a lot of business owners or organizations, that's how they can verify you're a veteran. Except there's so much PII on there that should really be stored away. So our technology can actually verify a veteran status off that paper, and we can equip them with a mobile ID that works on our mobile app that they use as their source of verification.
Yeah, it sounds like this should be something that every veteran or everybody who's leaving the military should have access to, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I mean that's obviously one of our goals is to get to that point. But eventually we will. So
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. It sounds kind of like a no-brainer to me, but I don't. They're not calling me and asking me what should happen. So,
it's
uh,
just a true joy. I mean, when we have last summer, I can remember this. Like again, I was there in the office and I had a World War II vet come in and he had bought a smartphone so he could get this ID, and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me, like, and he was thankful, and I'm like, you know what, that's what makes everything. That's what gives me the extra motivation. I have a World War II veteran in my office getting a mobile ID that he can proudly display, showing he's a veteran, and then we get to talking, and it ends up I had drinking beer in Germany where he had been on bombing missions,
oh wow.
60 years prior, and I couldn't fathom, he couldn't fathom that. And then that got me thinking, like, man, what if my grandkids told me, hey dad, or grandpa, I was in Fallujah drinking beer with the locals? I'd be like, what, like
Right. That's
how it
crazy.
works out. So
Yeah, when you put it like that, that makes it sound. You put it in like modern day context, and that's probably just really bizarre.
Yeah, I mean it's just gratifying. Like I can't put it another way where you come up with a concept, you launch it, and then you get to meet the people you're supporting, and what you call your fans, right? Because you want fans, but then it's just like man, like I slept good that night. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that had to have been an awesome experience for you. Is that kind of what caused you to get started on military cost cutters?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was before my last deployment or somewhere around there. My wife and I think I had a son at the time or something, or two. I can't remember. We had went down and to some museum or something, or amusement park, and I paid. It was like 70 some bucks, and I paid with credit card, and they wanted to see ID, so I gave him my military ID. 'Cause, I mean, used to that, you don't like show your driver's license or whatever. And he was like, "Oh, dude, like, we give a military discount." And I'm kind of like looking around, like, "Oh, I didn't see it anywhere." And he's like, "Eh," and it was like 20 some dollars. I was like, "Holy cow!" I was like, "You have Fort Bragg and Camp Lejeune, hundreds of thousands of military members who would come down here at the drop of a dime to." With their family to experience this for 20 some dollars, and you're not doing anything about it. He's like, no, and I'm like, so that just got my wheels going, and that's where we are to this point today.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds, I don't know, man. It sounds like a really good opportunity, and it sounds like it's could do a lot of stuff for a lot of veterans and their families. So I gotta give you props for seeing the opportunity to help a lot of people out and jumping on it.
Thanks.
No problem. So what is it? What's it been like? Because this is your first business you started, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. What's your experience been like so far?
Um, Controlled chaos. No, utter chaos. It's you see that diagram where you see like start to success and it's straight, but the real one it's all squiggly. Like that's what it is. I mean, my learning curve has been like that hockey stick, on a revenue chart. Like it has been unbelievable, and it's been hard and difficult, but it's been so like I've learned so much, and hopefully I'm better of it today. I understand, industries a little bit better and the business owner's needs, and it's like I said, really gratifying when I can or we our team can support that. So it's been I don't know it's been chaos, but it's been uh, also gratifying at the same time.
Yeah. What advice would you give to anybody who's looking at starting their own business?
Well, I mean, of course, this is my advice. You've got to solve a problem. Or, at the end of the day, you're trying to improve something, I guess, right? You're trying to make it something a little bit easier, better, or you're trying to solve a problem. In my case, I was solving a problem. And just do it, right? You don't want to look back and be like, oh, what if I would have done this, or I wish I would have. Like, just do it. I mean, everybody's situation is different, right? If you're married with 7 kids and you're nervous about launching it, then talk to somebody who's done it, who maybe have been in your position. I guarantee you, there's somebody out there, some business owners, or free resources you can speak to bounce your idea off it. But I mean, nowadays with all the technology we have, I mean, you should be able to really launch this, almost on a bootstrap and budget. And you think you have a great idea, but your customers in the market will let you know if it's wanted, and if it is, then boom, like go for it.
Yeah, it's kind of like that 80% rule that you talked about with and how you kind of pre-sold some of the features, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so if you can, find someone that's willing to pay for it in whatever version of or that it's in, or maybe it's in progress, then it sounds like that could be a way to validate their idea.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, revenue is nice. Revenue is what you need, obviously. But I mean, just go talk to them. Like before I launched mine, I went and talked to business owners saying, "Hey, here's my idea I got to solve this problem. What do you think?" And they would give me their candid feedback. I mean, I've got thick skin anyway, so constructive criticism doesn't bother me. And I figured out what they needed and wanted and made very small tweaks. But I was like, then I revisit them, be like, "Hey, I got it." They're like, "Cool, let's do it." Like, all right. I mean, go talk to the people who are going to be using your product or your service, and they'll let you know. You go talk to 100 people, and two of them are like, I might do this, and the other 98 are like, nope. Like, all right. Maybe I got to see if this is really something we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like how many is enough to find out if you have a good idea. I mean, I feel like you'd probably know after a certain amount of time, or if they're like, yeah, if it did this one thing, and then 10 people in a row say that, then I feel like that's pretty good validation that you might have something.
Yep.
Yeah, um, that's awesome. So so it sounds like you had a pretty successful transition from your military career to becoming a business owner. What advice would you have to other veterans who are currently transferring out of the military to civilian life or in the process of doing so?
Right. So, I mean, I used a hiring agency. I don't even know if that's the right word. It was like for junior military officers, and basically, I guess they're like a hiring firm or headhunter firm or whatever. The companies use them to find qualified candidates, send them away. I went that route. I mean, you got to figure out what you want to do. Where are you wanting to work, and and start getting your resume ready. Which there's so many outlets out there that can help you accomplish that. And then if you want to be an entrepreneur or start your own or start your own business, like there's so many websites out there or people that they help counsel and mentor these people and make sure they don't repeat failures that maybe they went through. Reach out to them. But I mean, this isn't something you do a month before you get out. Like you should start this process 6 to 9 months before you leave. I mean, I started mine 6 months before I left, and even then I was like, oh my gosh, I was freaking out a little bit about getting a job and everything. So,
Yeah, it's like that controlled chaos that seems to be like hanging over most of your life choices.
right.
No, I think that's good advice. Is kind of having a plan and executing on it. It sounds kind of familiar to some of the leadership advice you gave earlier. So sounds like you practice what you preach.
Try to.
Yeah. Well, man, I have a few regular questions that I ask all of my guests, just to kind of get an idea of what their routines look like, different things that influence them to get to where they are. So the first question is, what does your daily routine look like?
Man, if I had a daily routine, I'd be happy. I mean, it's fluid. So, but what I always like to do is I like to wake up and enjoy some coffee, kind of start, gathering my thoughts and check out some news sites or whatever, some articles, educate myself a little bit. And then it just depends, like during school, help with the kids get them ready or whatnot, and in the summertime try to be as quiet as possible before so they don't wake up. But I like to start it with coffee, like to educate myself, and then follow up on some emails and kind of check the agenda for today, make sure I didn't drop the ball on anything, and then kind of go into the sales approach for some of the day, and then go into the customer approach, both veteran and military friendly business. I like to check up with them. That's one of the key things we try to preach, or not try to preach, but not treating our customers like a number. So we like to check up with them, or check in with them. Good or bad. We need to hear what's going on. Obviously it's really good when it's good. When it's bad, we need to figure out what's going on. But and then I used to try to work out, but I'm bad. I'm getting lazy.
Right. Well, it sounds like you got a lot on your plate with like family, coach wrestling. Maybe you just need to start rolling around with the kids and get some practice in while you're coaching.
I try to do that, and I just stall. The old man, the stalling version comes out. So with them.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I think that was my go-to move when I was wrestling, was just stall for the time to roll out. Uh, so do you have a favorite or most impactful book that you'd like to recommend?
Um, you know, I've been thinking about that. One of the books that I really liked was Rework. Um,
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
was it by David, right? David, can't think of it, Hansen or something.
Yeah,
Anyway, I liked Rework just because it kind of goes with today's approach, right? We don't know what's going to be happening in 6 months. So when you write a business plan that's supposed to be solid for the 3 and 5 year plan, it's kind of hard to do that. And I kind of believe that approach. And I think you and I spoke about the 4 hour work week, like that just you know that was entertaining in itself, and almost made me think like, I wonder if I could do that. And then in the military, there was one called A Message to Garcia, and it just basically, breaks it down like, when you get a mission in a direction, like you accomplish it. It was a very short read, but it's something I enjoyed as well.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of that last book before, but I don't remember why. I'll have to do some looking into that because you're not the first person that's brought that up.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what would you say is the most important lesson you learned from your parents growing up?
Most important lesson from my parents? Ooh, I put me on the spot. Uh, I mean, there's so many of them. Um, Man, I I knew you were going to stump me on something today. I knew you were.
I always do. I always get somebody eventually. So,
One of the most important lessons is just, I guess, I don't know, treat everybody like you'd want to be treated. I try to preach that to my kids. Preached it to my Marines. Like, would you want to be treated like this? No, then don't freaking do it. And just live a better life. Or be a better person. So maybe there's one for you right there.
yeah, that's not a bad one. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the story you said about the officer that you had some issues with, and how that sounds like it inspired you to take that role. It's almost like you wanted that position so you could maybe show other people or show people from a position of leadership how to treat others.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do in your free time for fun? For what little free time it sounds like you probably have.
Well, I used to like to golf, and I still do like to golf. I just don't get to do it as much. But honestly, my free time is spent watching my kids and their sports or their activities, and I enjoy that wholeheartedly. Because a lot of people work and sometimes can't watch their kids participate, and my dad was a prime example of that, and my mom as well. So and being deployed, I miss out on some key stuff, but I absolutely love that, and any chance I can, free time to hang out with them and or go watch them, I try to do that.
Do you feel like that kind of changed your perspective a little bit when, maybe you were deployed during certain stages of their life?
Yeah, I mean it's tough. My first son was born when I was over there, so I didn't get to see him until he was like 7 months old. So, like I said, that's kind of my demeanor. Like I I don't take anything for granted now, or I try not to, and every moment I get with them, I treasure. So
Yeah, man. Now I'm enjoying our conversation. This is just really interesting, and it's even giving me a lot of perspective. It's going to remind me to not complain about little things anymore. So what's something that you learned this week?
something I've learned this week. I learned that there's a car dealership here in Des Moines that's like one of the best ones in the nation. So that was interesting in itself. What else did I learn this week? I learned so much at the state fair. We went there like on Sunday. So
Oh wow, I've lived in Iowa pretty much my whole life, and I've never actually been to the state fair.
I mean, we were there for like 6 hours or something, and I feel like we only touched like 25% of what it all had to offer. But
Damn, that must be a huge. I mean, I know it's big, but you make it sound a lot bigger than I even thought it was.
oh, huge. So
Yeah, well, so I learned something today. I need to go check out the Iowa State Fair at some point in time.
great.
Cool. Well, Aaron, I want to say thank you for taking the time to be a guest on the podcast today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and you've given me a lot to think about, whether it's my perspective on different challenges that pop up, or ways that I could probably be a better leader or communicator. Do you want to leave the listeners with, if they want to get a hold of you, how they do so, or if they want to, they want to become a customer or a business that works with military cost cutters, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, for sure. So we have my email address is first name dot last name at militarycostcutters.com. If you know a business or you are a business owner and you want to join, we have this very simple, streamlined pricing page. Basically, you go to our website, www.militarycostcutters.com, you'll see a pricing tab in our nav bar up top. And when you click on that, you get to see all of the packages we have to offer, and you select it, and it takes about 30 seconds, and you'll be up and rolling. That was launched a few months ago, and has been a huge success for reaching businesses actually outside the state as well. But
yeah, you guys have quite a few businesses signed up with you, don't you? Right now, like a few hundred.
Yep. Look, I think we've partnered with over 300 to date. So yeah, very blessed and appreciate all their support.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of The Formula. I have to give a big shout out to all of our veterans out there. I don't know if people say it enough, but extremely grateful for everything that you guys do. And, well, guys and gals too. If you'd like to find out more about Military Cost Cutters and what Aaron has going on, go ahead and head over to militarycostcutters.com or hit them up on their Facebook page. That's also Military Cost Cutters. On another note, if you think you'd enjoy or you would like to receive a weekly blog article, ebook, any type of resources from myself, go ahead and head over to helixacademy.co and sign up for the newsletter there. Until next week, I'm your host, Trevor, and I look forward to you tuning in next time.